Scott, who can run away from them. Blind trying to buy him a bit of time. Ozil, two!
This is Barkley, away from Otamendi. He's got two runners to his left and one to his right. Barkley wants to go alone, and why not?
Manchester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero!
Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast Podcast. I am your host Kris, as usual, and I have my co-host and fellow amigo of Sunday evenings returning this evening. I have Ross back in the hot seat. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Just me and you tonight, mate. Just the two of us.
It's gonna be a long one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I should say, Danny's had a very busy weekend, so he's not able to join us. I did have a replacement, Mr. John Welsh, but he got a better offer. We'll leave it at that, shall we?
If that better offer doesn't come off, then I'm going to be annoyed that he wasn't here.
Oh, me too. I will rib him mercilessly, if that's even a word. I think I just made it up. It's a very hipster word, if I did. Anyway, right, we've got lots to talk about, and a couple of our listeners were keen to get you back into the seats because they missed their championship update last week. We were really poor at getting into that, so we'll touch on that later. But we'll start with the Premier League, and quite an eventful day, and certainly at the top, we're going to work our way top down. So we'll start with the Sunday early game, which was Leicester and West Ham, a game that I did not see live, I must confess. I have been back and watched the highlights. What did you make of this thrilling, topsy-turvy, red-cardy, 2-2 draw of madness?
Well, you summed it up, didn't you? It was just all over the place, and it was mad. It was, a good advert for the Premier League, what we like to see, good competition, some debatable decisions, something we can get angry about and lively about, and some it's just an entertaining game. There wasn't a lot of quality on show. It was just good fun, and that kind of typifies Leicester this season. Just good fun. So I didn't have any complaints. I thought it was great for the neutral. I'm sure both sides probably had their complaints at some of the decisions and some of the play, but as a neutral, I thought it was great fun.
Let's touch on that, shall we? Let's touch on some of the decisions. So obviously, Leicester going in front through that man, through Jamie Vardy. Would it be fair to say they went ahead slightly against the run of play? I mean, West Ham seemed to start pretty well. Leicester looked, for the first time actually in a long time, Leicester looked a little bit nervous. Yeah,
they weren't exactly comfortable. I would still say the game was kind of in the balance at the point when Vardy scored, but certainly West Ham had the best chances. I mean, what Emenike is, I don't know if you've seen the chance, if you haven't seen the game. The first chance that landed inside the first minute or so was a header that hit one post, rolled across the line and struck another post before Kasper Schmeichel gathers it. And when it hits the far post for the second time, Emenike is there and he's waiting for the ball to bounce back out. I thought Emenike was a poacher, but instead of actually just getting in there and tapping it in, he's waiting for it to come back out. If he taps that in, then it's a different game because, as we all know, goals change the direction of games. But, I mean, that was the best chance of the game before Vardy scored. And, from a West Ham point of view, you'd probably say it was, not against the run of play, but maybe a bit harsh after that Emenike chance. You would have liked to have thought they'd been one up by then. But as a neutral, I would have said that it was quite finely balanced for the first 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I did see that chance, actually. That was utterly bizarre. But Vardy nevertheless put Leicester in front and all seemed to be going according to plan. And then there was a massive yawning gap of a little bit of end-to-end football between the 18th minute onwards all the way up to the last 5 minutes. And then all hell breaks loose. Jamie Vardy was booked earlier on in the game. And then on the 84th minute, sorry, not the 84th, around about, in fact, 56th minute, apparently it was, he was sent off. Now, I'm really pleased about this. Not, and I have to say, before we get Leicester fans sending me bricks through my window, I'm not pleased that Leicester dropped points because, trust me, with the other option available, I'd rather Leicester win the league right now. But I was pleased that the referee, John Moss, gave this decision because Jamie Vardy and indeed others tend to have been getting away with this type of decision a lot this season. Can you sort of describe to our listeners a bit about what happened and the reasons why you think he was sent off?
Yeah, I can't think of the centre-back that was challenging him. I think it might very well have been Ogbonna, but Vardy is coming through left-hand side of the penalty area, but still clean through, and he's twisted his body into the defender and gone down under quote unquote the challenge as if he'd been tackled. From a neutral point of view, you'd probably say that that's one of those 50-50 ones, and it's a debatable one. And, you know, if you're a Leicester fan, then it's a very harsh decision. If you're a West Ham fan, then it's an outrageous dive. For me, and I know I'm going to show my colours as a journalist here, and the semantics of this being incredibly important. There was a lot of complaints on Twitter about it being a dive, and it not being a dive or being a dive or whatever. I think one thing you have to take away from this particular incident is differentiating between a dive and simulation, because simulation is like a haircut and a dive is like a buzz cut. A dive is an actual part of simulation. Simulation is playing for the free kick, playing for the penalty, whatever. It's not a dive because he hasn't dived. He's not just thrown himself to the floor. What he's done is he's tried to play for the penalty, because you can see it from the camera angle that's directly in front of the way he's running. He's clearly turned his body into the defender. He's clearly playing for it. Now, for me, there's no excuse for that. You know, it's you trying to manipulate the situation because he was running down a cul-de-sac. He didn't think he was going to get anywhere, so he's tried to buy a penalty. So for me, it's a fair enough yellow card. And I know there's a lot of debate about it, but I think the real reason there is a debate about it is because of the semantics. If you call it a dive, it's not a dive. If you call it simulation, it's definitely simulation.
That's a great analogy, the basket one, and I completely agree with you, because it's almost like players have found a way around not diving but buying a penalty this season. I really, really don't like it, and obviously being an Arsenal fan, we did experience it from Vardy ourselves.
Yeah, I think most teams seem to have. As soon as he did it and he got sent off, Twitter exploded with people that said, you know, he's been doing that all season and nothing's been done about it. I mean, against Southampton, he didn't. It's not like he was diving against us, but he was certainly going down far too softly, and you see that from loads of strikers these days anyway. But it was something that Jamie Vardy himself was doing a lot of. And I don't want to call him out on it personally, because everyone does it these days. But it's still nice to see someone finally be brave enough to make the decision and say, no, I'm not having that. Because normally you see those, and if they're not given, then it's not even a yellow. But it's simulation. You know, he's clearly trying to win that penalty because he's got no other option ahead of him. So I thought it was a really nice decision, really nice to see it.
Absolutely. One thing I will say is fair play, the referee got it right, and what I'll say is I'll be amazed if we see more right than wrong, because being a referee, Jesus, how are you going to get, because some of these players, it's an art form, isn't it, the way some of them do it, so it's tough. So good on you, John Moss. Not always your biggest fan, but fair play. More on John Moss, though, because as if this game hadn't had enough as it was, we then had more incidents late on. First of all, Andy Carroll bagged a penalty to level it up at 1-1 after 84 minutes. Winston Reid, I think it was, kind of manhandled to the floor by Wes Morgan. And again, this is a penalty that we don't see given enough, I don't think, where players have, I think we saw one in the Arsenal Palace game this afternoon as well, where players have practically got people in headlocks, and it's not given. This one was just a pure sort of throw to the floor. Did you think this was the right decision to give a penalty for this one as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought those were penalties because you've clearly impeded him and you're clearly holding him back. I mean, I've seen at least 3 different occasions where Southampton strikers have been taken down like that this season alone. I remember distinctly one against Chelsea where Ivanovic has got hold of Van Dijk round the waist and by the shirt. You know, it happens all the time, and the only way you stop it is by calling defenders out on it, because I know Ryan Shawcross is pretty bad for it and John O'Shea is pretty bad for it. They just get away with it for some reason. And it was, you know, people can debate the decision, but it was like I was saying to you pre-pod, I thought it was just really brave from John Moss to give these at long last, because they happen all the time, but no referee wants to be the first one to say, no, that's a penalty. Because let's be fair, if that happens anywhere else on the field, just like the penalty coming up in a minute we're talking about with Ujoa scoring the equalising penalty, if that foul happens anywhere else, it's a free kick. So that doesn't change just because it's in the penalty area. It's not going to be some special clear cut, oh my god, what an awful kind of tackle that was to warrant a penalty. If it's a foul, it's a foul. And I thought, again, that was another really brave decision.
I would completely agree with that analysis, and you're absolutely right in the way you put it as well. We should say that, as you say, before we talk about the Ujoa penalty, there was a worldie of a strike from the left back Creswell to make it 2-1 in the sort of 85th, 86 minutes, just like a minute later, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And fair play to him, caught Schmeichel off guard. And at that point, roar went up. Leicester were trying to cheer on their players, but you really did think, oh, is this the first sign of a crack? And then, as you say, down the other end, Andy Carroll from hero to villain, sorry, shoulder barges. Was it Schlopp, wasn't it? Jeffrey Schlopp.
Yes.
Again, for you, as you've just said, that free kick anywhere else on the pitch, so can't really have any complaints, surely, with this penalty.
No, he's clearly just wiped him out, hasn't he? He's just run straight into him and pushed him. It's a foul. I don't care what anyone says. That is a foul anywhere else. So just because it's in the area, it doesn't change it. That's absolutely a penalty and absolutely a foul.
Completely agree again. And do you think that there's a lot of this talk? I know on Match of the Day last night, I think it was Trevor Sinclair was saying we're in danger of making the sport a non-contact sport. How do we differentiate between what is a blatant shove and what is just sort of somebody out-strengthening someone else? Because I'll put this to you. If that challenge is made going down towards the corner flag and a player's trying to shepherd the ball out, then it's very 50-50 as to whether it's given or not. Yet in the penalty area, they seem to be given. So do you think there's an argument about this sort of this non-contact sport thing?
Yeah, I mean, I've said on this pod a million times now that I'm into the defensive side of this game, and I like seeing people that can tackle. I like seeing strong defenders doing the job of a classic 1980s defender, where they just get in the way of things, push people about, get on the ball, and break things up. That's fantastic. But you've clearly got to differentiate between excessive force, which is clearly what Andy Carroll was using today against Schlupp, because he's just cleared him out. He's not gone for the ball. He's not tried to go shoulder to shoulder with him. He's just tried to take him out. You have got to be careful, because I don't want to see tackling disappear, and I don't want defenders especially to start thinking, oh God, I can't touch him because. But you've still got to use common sense. If it's unfair and it's not just that guy's stronger than that guy, and it's clearly excessive and there's too much in it, then you've got to be conscious of it. But yeah, I mean, it is a tough one. It is a tough one, because you don't really know where to draw the line. One referee will say this is okay, and another referee will say it isn't. But it's very, very important to strike the balance, and finding it is the tough part.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. So where do you think this leaves ahead of? We'll talk about the chasing pack, and obviously we'll preview the game that hasn't been played yet in a minute. But where do you think this leaves Leicester now? I mean, could this potentially just be a point closer to the title that seems to be theirs, or do you think that this is a sort of a chink in the armour, some tough fixtures ahead?
I think if Vardy stayed on the pitch, they would have won. So I'm not going to say that this is the sign of that wobble we've seen coming for months and months. I thought it was just circumstance in a crazy game. But at the same time, you never know how these things are going to affect you. I think they've got Swansea at home next week, which is kind of the perfect game to bounce back in. So I'm not too concerned. They only need 3 more wins to take this, and I think there's probably at least 2 in their final run-in. So I'm not too concerned. I'm still pro Leicester in this title race, and I think this could turn out to be a big result, but only if Leicester let it. Otherwise, I think it's still very much in their hands.
Agreed. Before we sort of go through the review of the rest of the games yesterday, we should just sort of touch on Spurs, whose game is tomorrow. Away at Stoke, the old cliche, or a wet Monday night in Stoke, or whatever it is. What do you foresee happening, Nostradamus, so to speak? Do you think it's going to be? Do you think sort of Spurs can go there and grind out a result? Do you think they'll go there and just blow Stoke out the water? How do you sort of see this game going?
I don't see Tottenham as the grind out a result kind of team, and having seen Pochettino for 2 years, he's not that kind of manager either. I think Stoke away is a big banana skin for anyone, especially when you're in the title race. And Tottenham are not exactly the biggest side in the world. They're still pretty lightweight. They'll go shoulder to shoulder, but 9 times out of 10 they will lose. They rely on moving the ball and finding space. Something which, generally speaking, you don't get at the Britannia. But of course, we all know that Stoke are evolving at the moment. They're not the same rugby club they used to be. So I would be cautious of it if I was a Tottenham fan. But as a neutral, I still expect them to nick that by a goal.
Yes, I'll decline to comment at the risk of upsetting any Spurs fans we have listening. But let's just say I'll be in the red and white camp as usual tomorrow. Anywho, moving on now, we'll just sort of wrap up the top end, because obviously I think we could both agree it's a 2-horse title race. But we should just touch on Man City's victory, because they have leapfrogged Arsenal standard by beating Chelsea comprehensively, 3-0. I don't know how much of this game you got to see, but Sergio Aguero hat-trick. And what really stood out to me was, A, Man City a much better side with Kevin De Bruyne, but B, despite Chelsea having a bit of a recovery under Hiddink, the gap between these two sides was just so apparent in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the first half. Didn't catch the second. I don't remember what I was doing after that, but the first half didn't interest me enough. Chelsea are another one of those teams that are in transition. We know who's coming in, and there's a lot of rumours about Manolas and Nainggolan coming in from Roma and all these other players. So they are a team that are going to get some heavy investment, and next year we'll be able to challenge Man City. I'm sure of that. But yesterday it wasn't pretty from a Chelsea fan. I remember seeing some pretty harsh criticisms of the second half on my Twitter feed yesterday. So yeah, I mean, I suppose for a Chelsea fan, you're just kind of going through the motions and waiting for the season to end. But at the same time, you still want to be seeing a bit more fight from a team that's meant to be on the same level as Man City.
Absolutely, I do like that Man City kit, but that's a whole other story for a rainy day. Man City, I know this obviously is an English breakfast pod, so we're focusing on the Premier League and whatnot. But what do you see their chances in the Champions League? I mean, do you think that's? Do you think they can win it now, given what's happened in midweek? PSG, Barcelona falling. I mean,
well, I think anyone can win it from the four they've got because it's a very good four. And frankly, on their day, any one of those could beat any of them. The issue for me, really, I think, is how wobbly Madrid were against Wolfsburg away. But realistically speaking, and again, I know this is an English breakfast pod and we're not really that interested in Europe, but today Barcelona have lost to Valencia. Atletico Madrid have got a very good win at home to whoever it was they were playing, I forget now. But the title race in Spain, as much as I hate to say it because I do not get on with Spanish football, is probably one of the better title races still going at the moment, along with the Championship as well, because that's also extremely competitive. But in terms of mainstream European football, that's probably the most exciting title race we've got at the moment. So I think a lot will also depend on domestic, how brave Real Madrid feel they can be in La Liga, and how confident they feel they can close that gap on Barcelona. If they take their eyes off the ball, then yeah, Man City got every chance in the world. But Madrid being Madrid, they'll try and spread themselves and take everything, and that again could be difficult for them because Man City, when that game rolls around, are going to be really going for that because you've got to know that Pellegrini is licking his lips at the idea of leaving Manchester City with the Champions League. So I mean, it's right in the balance. I think it's a lot tastier now that the title race in Spain is closed up, but if I was going to put money on it, I'd probably still go Madrid. But I think it's a good 50-50 at this point.
Yeah, with you. I must say I'm one of those people that thinks Real Madrid will come through that. I still not convinced by City. What I will say though is it does seem to be almost written in the stars that Pellegrini will be in a final with Guardiola. It just seems like it's written, doesn't it? But we shall see. More on that in the main pods and the satchels, of course. Let's move on then from those. We'll move back to the sort of race for third, fourth, whatever it is. Arsenal drawing at home to Crystal Palace. I'm actually quite glad that it's only you here, so that I don't have to sort of wind John up even more as he was earlier on. Wasn't convincing once again. Another disappointing home performance from the Gunners. What, from sort of outsider's perspective, do you think the criticism is fair? The amount of people that are getting on, obviously the manager's back, the players back. And another question I want to ask you, do you think the home crowd, or the home playing at home essentially, that the players are not relaxed? Because there seems to be a real issue of playing at home at the moment for Arsenal.
I don't think any player is relaxed no matter what Arsenal are doing at the moment because, we've all said that this was their year. They were the only team coming into this title race that was consistent. We knew what we were going to get. They had a good manager in place. They had good players. This was their year. I don't care what Arsenal fans say about that being, a good indictment or a bad indictment or whatever they want to say. This was Arsenal's year because they were best placed. It's nothing to do with the talent in their squad compared to the others over the years. It was just the fact that everyone else just seemed to fall away, and the only one that stayed was Arsenal. And the problem is that as the season has gone on, everyone that fell away has come back together and Arsenal have fallen apart. It's strange the way it's worked. But playing at home is always tricky because you do have to go out and attack. You do have to entertain a great deal more people, and they're not as forgiving if you go a goal down as you are when you play away. But it just seems that the whole Arsenal team at the moment are just completely lacking in confidence, and I think the feeling is that they know they've blown it. That they know this was a really good opportunity, and they know they've let it go. As for the criticisms, it does feel very T.S. Eliot. It ends not with a bang but with a whimper. I think Wenger is probably on his last legs. Either this season or next will probably be his last. If you want to get into a debate about changing everything and that kind of stuff, I think it's too early for that. I think you debate the change when you need to debate the change. Wenger will tell you when he's going to go, and then you can have the conversation about who you want next. Until then, you stick with Wenger and you get behind him and you tell him that, okay, things aren't going well, but we still believe we can finish, third, second, get above Tottenham, whatever. You take any little victory you can get. So, yeah, I mean, the criticism is born out of frustration, and I understand that. But as far as I'm concerned, you stick with them until it changes, and then you go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. If only some of our fan base were as sensible as your good self. Yeah, but maybe never going to happen, sadly. But hey ho. As for Palace, it's a point that now surely assures them of safety. I mean, they've kind of Palace sort of remind me of that guy. He's got a heavy limp. He's got an arm in a sling, a patch over his eye, but he's just about getting home after the apocalypse. You know what I mean? He's just sort of hobbling, dragging himself home, but nevertheless he gets home and he bolts his door safely. They've been far from convincing for seemingly months, but that point now, that's got to be enough, isn't it? We should say that, of course, they got a point away at Everton in midweek as well, or home, sorry.
Yeah. You considering a few weeks ago we were saying they're probably down, because they were in such bad relegation kind of form. Those 2 points are huge, especially with the way the bottom four now is really condensing and gripping together. You'd like to think that's enough. I still think Norwich and Sunderland have got enough in them to get up to 40 points if they really went for it, or at least in and around in the games they've got left. But I'd still expect Crystal Palace to gain at least one more point before the end of the season, and the goal difference alone should be enough. So yeah, I'd like to think that's another good step for Palace. But as for I don't know if you saw these quotes, but Pardew was talking about maybe signing a new contract. I think that's probably a bit ambitious after this particular season. But there you go.
Yeah. Always Pards. He's always the optimist, isn't he? Bless him, or not, whichever camp you sit in. Let's talk about Pards' former club then, and that's Newcastle, going all the way down to the bottom end with this relegation chase. We'll touch on probably the biggest game of the weekend at the bottom in a minute, but Newcastle, first of all, 3-0 victory over Swansea. Was I the only one that saw this coming a mile off? Swansea literally playing in flip-flops with a beach towel round, and they might as well have been just bouncing around an inflatable dolphin rather than a football, because they were completely just not into the game. So was I the only one that saw this coming for Newcastle to get a victory?
I didn't see it coming, but apparently Andros Townsend said he felt a 3-0 coming as well. So, even if you thought a Newcastle win was coming, did you think it would be 3? Did you think it would be as comprehensive as this?
No, I have to say I saw like a 2-1, like Swansea going in front or Newcastle going in front and chucking it away and then getting a late winner. I didn't think it would be I didn't think it would be an easy 3-0, no.
I mean, I've got to admit, I've seen the first 2 goals. I've missed Townsend's last one, knowing Townsend is probably from 30 yards out and in the top corner. But I've seen the first 2, and they're not exactly the cleanest goals in the world. They're pretty scrappy, not fortunate, but, on another day, a better goalkeeper gets in front of it and saves it. So it's not like 3-0 was a victory that's been coming for a while, pent up frustration, whatever. Because I watched them last week against us, they were rancid. In the first half, I remember putting in our WhatsApp group, this could be 8-0. I didn't mean that across the game. I meant that could be 8-0 in the first half. They were awful against us last week. And I went into this week thinking, they're probably just going to get a draw. There's not going to be too many goals in this, or maybe even Swansea will nick it. But I certainly didn't see 3-0 coming. That's a fantastic win for Newcastle and for Rafa, especially for the fans to get that at home. That should be a really good shot in the arm for Newcastle, but I didn't see it coming personally, especially not on that level.
No, I agree. We'll sort of touch. There is a couple of midweek games, so we'll touch on them as they become relevant to the teams. We should say, of course, that there's just the 6 midweek games, because Arsenal got a game on a Thursday, weirdly. But one of the midweek games is Newcastle in action at home again, and this time they entertain Manchester City. be fair to say that's on Tuesday. Sorry, be fair to say that's going to be a whole different kettle of fish as far as the challenge goes. Have they got to build on that result at Swansea yesterday? I mean, I know it's Man City. I know they're a good side, but surely they've got to be looking to get two lots of 3 points, or at the very least a draw.
Yeah, I mean, if Norwich can get 0-0 there, then Newcastle can get at least 0-0 there. I think, especially after that 3-0, and especially with Rafa Benitez in charge, he will know how to set up against big teams like Manchester City. If you're a Newcastle fan, then you might be feeling a bit doom and gloom about it, I suppose, because every time Man City comes to town, you do start to worry. But at the same time, as a neutral, after that result, I could see a draw, maybe a 1-1, maybe a 0-0. But I suppose it really depends on how much Man City turn up. You know, if they don't turn up to their full potential, then yeah, of course, there's always the chance for a team that's fighting relegation to come and nick something. But if Man City really desperately want those points, then I don't think Newcastle have got much in the way of a defensive backbone to stop the Agueros and De Bruynes if they feel like playing on Tuesday.
No, I agree. Their first goal is massive in that game. If Newcastle can get something and try and defend it, then crucial. But I think if City score first, I can't see anything other than a straightforward win for City. But again, as an Arsenal fan, I shall be cheering on the Geordies. Let's talk about arguably the biggest game of the weekend. Certainly at the bottom it is anyway, and it was the first game of the weekend, the Sunderland game against Norwich. I know you didn't see all of this game, so we'll sort of cobble together between it because I did see it from my pit on Saturday morning. It's I think we said on the pod last week in your absence that we all felt the winner of this game was going to stay up. Do you concur with that, having Sunderland walk away with the 3-0 victory? And do you think they are now going to be the favourites to escape?
Oh, well, I suppose that depends on the running more than anything. Who have Norwich got? Norwich have got Arsenal away, Manchester United at home, Watford away. Watford at home and Everton away. I mean, those last two could completely turn whether or not the last two are in the FA Cup, I suppose. But I mean, Norwich have got a very tricky ride. They're still a good side. I still like Norwich. They've still got enough endeavour about them, in the same way that Bournemouth do. They just have a nice spirit and movement and playing style, which I think can still win them points in those last four games. But Sunderland, home to Arsenal, away to Stoke, home to Chelsea, home to Everton, and away to Watford. I mean, again, the last two could depend on the FA Cup, but those next three are very tough. So, I mean, realistically speaking, you could be sat here in 2 weeks' time and things haven't changed between them, because Norwich could very easily lose to Arsenal and Man United, and Sunderland could very easily lose to Arsenal and to Stoke. So it could be status quo. I don't know. I'm not on board with you guys that say Sunderland are now favourites to stay up, because I still think that Norwich have a good amount about them. But at the same time, it's Sam Allardyce. It's still a work in progress. They did keep a clean sheet. They did have enough about them in attack. So I don't know. It's topsy-turvy. But if I was going to pick my bottom three today, my bottom three would probably have Sunderland in it.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. We should probably, if we get time, actually, at the end of this pod, we'll do a quick one of those doobly bops, the results table thing, just for the relegation zone, because it fascinates me. Have a look at that in a minute. I'll see if I can find the link. What about the idea that, I mean, I just realised Arsenal have got to play both Sunderland and Norwich in the run-in, so that's a guaranteed 3 points for each of those two.
Yeah, banana skins, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That's not ideal for us. But what about the sort of the teams, or I say the teams in and around? We talked about Palace already. We've talked about Swansea. Do you think those two are 100% safe? And equally, that we can throw West Brom in there, who, of course, had another defeat. We should touch on them individually in a minute, actually. But they had a defeat as well. Do you think it is now two from Newcastle, Sunderland, Norwich, or do you still think Palace, Swansea, and West Brom have got a bit of work to do?
There's always a danger. It depends completely on how the Norwich and Sunderland reacts to the games they've got left. But I would probably say that out of the games they've got left, they're still very, very tough, and I don't anticipate too many wins. I see a lot of draws in there, but I don't see too many wins for either of them. Personally, I think this relegation fight is going to kind of peter out, where teams are just going to keep losing because there's so much on the line. Teams catch them on the break and things like that. I don't see that bottom three changing a great deal. I think Newcastle now have as good a chance as anyone. but I just kind of get the feeling at the moment that this relegation fight might just turn into a bit of a real fist fight, I suppose, where teams are just trying desperately for anything they get, and more often than not losing, and things just staying status quo. But it's a very, very interesting run-in. It's a very interesting relegation fight, and Crystal Palace certainly aren't out of it. I think Swansea are probably safe, because I'm happy to say that they're going to get at least one more point before the end of the season. And if Everton, Watford and Bournemouth are safe on 41, then Swansea can be safe on 41.
Yeah, I totally with you. I think Palace maybe need one more point, maybe, but yeah, I can't see anybody else getting sucked in, really. But we shall see. Stranger things have happened. Now, we've talked about Aston Villa. We've done them to death, really, over the past few weeks. I mean, literally done them to death. They feel like a dead club. But I just want to touch on Sir Jolyon of Lescott. Some interesting comments, some of which were slightly exaggerated, but one of the ones that he did clearly say, I don't know if you've got the quote to hand there, but if our listeners haven't heard, if you have the quotes, read them, feel free. But what was your thoughts overall on what he said?
I don't have them in front of me, but I know it was that relegation is now a weight off their shoulders, and hopefully we can now give the fans performances they deserve. I mean, I think there's a lot of misinformation going around. I know there's a couple of pictures which have him talking about going for drinks and having a laugh after the game, which I can't find anywhere, so I'm not convinced that they're 100% accurate. But, you know, he's meant to be Aston Villa through and through, isn't he, Jolyon Lescott? He's meant to be a fan.
He's meant to be a fan, yeah.
And it's like, if you're a fan of this club, and you just imagine having to watch them for that season, and then think of all the fans in that stadium that would have loved the chance to get on that pitch, pull on that shirt, and show the other guys around him how much Aston Villa means and how much more they have to give. If you're a fan of that club, you're going to be up in arms. So what on earth is Jolyon Lescott doing, talking about it being a weight off the shoulders and now we can play with free? Nonsense. You know, it's absolute crap from a player that should really, not just because he's a fan, but from experience, should know better.
That's a very fair way of putting it. I can read the quotes. I have them in front of me. These were the official quotes that were given to Match of the Day. So just in case anyone wonders if these are real or not, these are official. He described the relegation as, quote, a weight off the shoulders. He said we can give these fans what they deserve, some performances. His remarks have been dubbed selfish and insensitive by some supporters, and former Aston Villa striker Stan Collymore, now a commentator for TalkSport, said, "Why is it a weight off the shoulders, Jolyon? It should hang on your shoulders. There's the Villa staff, there's real weight on their shoulders. People are getting made redundant. They've been there for 20 years and don't know where their next paycheck is coming from." And do have a look on, I think it's 101 Great Goals. They've got a DM conversation between Stan Collymore and Jolyon Lescott. It makes for interesting reading. So yes, I think it's fair to say Villa are a rotten club right now. And I
think the best thing that Jolyon Lescott came out with this weekend, though, is that he said he wanted to stay and fight the good fight. No Aston Villa fan wants him there. That's probably the worst thing he could have said. Yeah. I think. I mean, I can see so many players leaving that club. It's just going to be such a clear out, and depends if there's buyers for them, of course.
That's also true. Yeah, I think a lot of the French lads will go back to France. In fairness, so I think there'll be buyers there, and there's a few talented players. Jordan Ayew, I think, has proven that he can do a job at a Premier League club. I think Jordan Amavi, I'm a big fan of. Rudy Gestede, arguably, is an ideal player to keep for the Championship, as you would know, but I can see him being picked up by a West Brommy type team, maybe.
Frankly, I think that for Aston Villa this summer, I think they're going to be more attractive to Championship teams than they are any other league in the world. I think there's going to be a lot of Championship clubs that are going to look at that team and go, yeah, all right, we'll have you. I mean, Mika Richards, I don't know where Mika Richards is going to go next, because he was brought in as captain and you barely saw him do anything as a captain. So I think someone, in the Championship, or even if someone that goes up, maybe even Derby, might go, yeah, we'll try for Mika Richards. I think they're going to be fantastically attractive for the Championship, but nowhere else, except maybe, of course, like you say, the French league for some of the lads that they bought from there.
Yeah, return trips, shall we say. I hope they got their air miles in check. But Villa lost 1-0, of course, to Manchester United, who are up to 5th and just 4 points behind Arsenal now. Just a quick question on Man United. If they get 4th and potentially win an FA Cup, could you see Louis van Gaal's Red Army still being in place next season?
they've got to do both for me. I don't think it's a case of one or the other. I think you've got to do both if you want to keep Louis van Gaal in charge, because the fans are against him. The players not necessarily are against him, but certainly there's a lot of stories coming out about his training regimen and how Anthony Martial just shrugs things off and laughs now when Louis van Gaal gets angry. And it doesn't feel like the right things are coming out of Man United anymore. And I don't think that would have gone amiss at the top with the chairman. So I think you'd have to do both to guarantee him. But at the same time, if the stories of Mourinho going to PSG are true, then that's one good candidate gone. I don't think Pochettino would move there, so that's another candidate gone. And then you've only got Laurent Blanc, and if Deschamps leaves the French national team, then Blanc could be in for that. So I think it's a bit of a messy one. Man United might just hold on to him until the end of the Euros and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see the Blanc thing, by the way. I've heard it on very good authority that Laurent Blanc might look for pastures new, and the talk is Mourinho is the number one target to replace. So, yeah, stay tuned on that one. I, for one, wouldn't be that keen, but hey-ho, it's not my decision. But Man United is out to 5th. West Ham, with their draw today, in 6th. You'd think with 4 straight draws, that's them out of the top 4 race, would you say? 7 points away from it now?
I'd like to say yes, because I'm not the biggest West Ham fan in the world. But at the same time, I think, as I said in this pod before, that they seem to struggle against the teams that are in and around them, and they've still got to play Man United. And aside from that, they're all teams that they should be beating comfortably and will probably end up drawing with. So, yeah, they might just plateau and end here on a string of draws and the occasional win, but you never know, because Man United have been hit and miss, and Arsenal and Man City haven't been comfortable all season. So there's potential, and for West Ham, it's a never say die attitude to this European race. But I think, roughly speaking, the top 5 is probably going to be as is.
Yep, I agree. It's just the order I think needs sorting out overall. We said we'd just sort of going down to the bottom again. We said we'd just touch on West Brom because they lost at home to Watford, and Soto Berahino not only missing 1 penalty, but missed 2 penalties, or I should say missed. They were both saved by Aurelio Gomez, and both very good saves, it has to be said, even if they were at, quote, a nice height for the keeper, which always amuses me when people say that, because I don't really know what a nice height is or a not nice height, but still, good saves. And West Brom seems to be a lot of unrest. Only Everton, who we'll come on to in a minute, I think have got fat. Well, actually, and Arsenal, to be fair. But of the clubs in that area, it seems that West Brom supporters are completely done with Tony Pulis' style, with it, well, lack of, with the way he organises a team, the defensive side of things. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, and also your thoughts on, somebody rang in BBC 606 last night and said, look at what has happened to Stoke since Tony Pulis has moved and they've changed their philosophy. Do you think there's an argument that maybe the game is moving on away from Tony Pulis' style of play?
Well, there's an argument for it, but at the same time, it's circumstance. Stoke could get rid of Tony Pulis because they've been in the Premier League for God knows how long, and they had a lot of money, and they could afford to buy a player like Gianni Mbula for more money than the stadium cost. So, Stoke were going in the right direction. They could afford to let Tony Pulis go and try someone else. They could take that swing. I don't think West Brom can. If you lose Tony Pulis from West Brom, then they are relegation fodder. For as long as they've been in the Premier League, aside from the season they had with Hodgson, I don't remember them being overly impressive. It's only been when they've been able to loan in a guy like Lukaku when they've been able to swing for the fences in the top 10. Otherwise, they're a bottom half club, and they will be in a relegation fight every season, as far as I'm concerned, until they've got some decent finance behind them. So I think if you're a West Brom fan, it's perfectly understandable if you're upset with the style of play, but I think you've got to be careful what you wish for, just as Newcastle have found with getting rid of Alan Pardew. I think it's another one of those situations where you've got to be sure that whoever comes in next is going to be the right step forward. And I don't think West Brom are in that position of luxury.
Agreed. We'll quickly sort of gloss over Liverpool's victory at Bournemouth. Nothing against either club, but it's largely a result that is, I wouldn't say meaningless, but it doesn't really change too much in the way of table. Liverpool up to 8th and 51 points, and Bournemouth, you'd think safe, kind of 41 points. You'd think they've done enough now in 13th. Goals from Firmino and Sturridge with a late Josh King reply there. So we'll gloss over that one. I know you've got a lot you want to get off your chest with regards to Everton. who just so happened to be playing your good side Southampton this weekend. So the floor is yours. What do you want to say about Bobby Martinez and co?
Well, I'll start with Southampton because I think this week is probably the least I'll have to say about Southampton. For us, it typified not just this season, but the past three, where we've dominated games but not been able to put away the chances that we've had. It's another issue with not scoring enough goals. The defence is fantastic and that's brilliant, but up front we are not strong enough. We do not score enough, and I said this before. Teams like Southampton, teams like West Ham, they are only one good striker away from doing Leicester City's job this season, because if it wasn't for Vardy and Mahrez being in the form they are in, Leicester would not be anywhere near first position. Southampton just need another striker that's a good, consistent finisher, and then problems are solved really with Southampton. It's just a case of making sure the performance levels are good enough. And there's a lot of reports suggesting we're going to go in for someone you'll know, Lacazette.
Oh, yes.
No idea why Lacazette would drop to Southampton when he seems to be a striker that could walk into a Champions League side. But at the same time, I suppose you never know with the summer and how much money is going to be in the game next time. So watch this space, I suppose. But I'd love him here. I think he'd be a fantastic addition, but I don't think it's going to happen. So that's all I can really say about Southampton this week. It was a really, really tough, frustrating draw, and there were times during it where the lack of goal scoring felt like it was going to shoot us in the foot, and it almost did when Funes Mori scored. But realistically, I think the big story from that game personally was Everton. Because you've asked me a couple of times on this pod before now, how do I think about the fans getting on Martinez's back and this kind of stuff? And I've said, it's a good style. They've got to work on the defending and that kind of thing. I only ever get to see Everton when they play us, because they're not normally a team that gets TV coverage unless they're playing Liverpool or something like that. This was the first time I got to see them raw, I suppose, because in the home leg, when they beat us 3-0, we were absolutely awful, and the way that Everton played was just always going to, reward them with loads of goals against us. I should preface this by saying if yesterday's performance is typical of their season, and that's a big if, because I haven't seen them all season, and they were pretty poor defensively. I mean, they were giving the ball away so often, and barely looked like they were interested until the ball crossed the white line and was into Southampton's defensive half. If yesterday's performance is indicative of their season, then I do not think I'm scaremongering in saying that if they lose Lukaku and Stones this summer, they are going in the same direction as Newcastle and Aston Villa. Because Newcastle and Aston Villa, if they both go down this season, they weren't relegated this season. They were relegated 2 or 3 seasons ago. Because it's been a steady slide down the table. This feels to me like the beginning of that slide for Everton, unless they correct things. Now they've got plenty of opportunity because they've just got some new finance in, and if they do lose Lukaku and Stones and Barkley, then you'd like to think they'll be able to replace them properly. But if they don't, if they end up with another Nyasa or another Funes Mori, who has been good, but I don't think has been good enough compared to some of the players they've lost defensively. If they don't have a good summer and they do lose Lukaku and they do lose Stones especially, and Martinez stays, I would be highly, highly concerned for Everton in a slow slide down the league. Because let's put this in perspective. They have 9 wins. The only clubs that have won less games than them this season are Norwich, Sunderland, Newcastle and Aston Villa. That's hideous. That's absolutely awful. And if it wasn't for the sheer amount of goals they've scored, they'd be in real, real trouble. So just from what I saw yesterday, like I say, if that was indicative of their season, they've got big, big concerns going forward.
That is quite the damning. But I'm with you. I have to say, I am with you. I think they strike me as a club that need major surgery. Sorry, that's my cats racing around in the background there. The joys of live podding. But I do see them, as you say. I mean, aside that there's a lot of surgery needs doing, but I think it's going to be more about who they retain than who they bring in. So, as you rightly say, a lot of the talk suggests they're going to lose at least 3 or 2 of the 3 big names, and I think Barkley's the one I could see staying, but Lukaku and who's the other one you mentioned? Stones.
I mean, you've got to think of it. Aston Villa is the one I'd put forward, because a couple of seasons ago they had Delph, they had Benteke, and then go a couple of seasons before that they had some strong centre backs whose names completely elude me. But it was just slowly that they started to slip down the table. Someone comes in and cherry picks this player. This player says he wants to move on to get Champions League football or go on to bigger things. That player gets chipped away. The manager stays the same. He can't do it without the players that he had. That manager gets sacked. It starts a cycle, and slowly the club moves down the league. that is symptomatic of a lot of teams in the Premier League. Thankfully, a lot of teams have been able to catch it, like Stoke, like Swansea have. They've been able to catch it early, and they've been able to change course. Now, they've got plenty of money coming in this summer, but if they end up with another Nyasa, if Lukaku goes, they're going to be in major, major trouble, because without Lukaku's goals, they'd be nowhere near 11th. So I'm not saying they're in a relegation fight next season. I'm not saying that, but I am saying they have to be careful, because if that performance is stereotypical of their season, it was awful, and it's the start of a very slow slide, I think.
Yeah, I am totally with you. Totally with you. Good rant. I like it. Very accurate. So that's Everton done. And just for Southampton, just quickly to throw my 2 pence worth in. I love Alexandre Lacazette, as I'm sure many of our listeners know, and I personally think he could do a job, like you said, at a Champions League Cup. I think he'd be excellent with Arsenal, and he'd be probably quite cheap, which is always appeals to Arsenal. That said, under Koeman in your system, particularly if you can keep a Mane and a Tadic feeding him, oh yeah, that could work really, really well. So
the big thing for us at the moment, or a lot of the rumours that are going around, are attackers, because the goals, they just dry up all the time. I thought Charlie Austin would have been perfect for the game against Everton, because the ball was just bouncing everywhere and there was no one just to pop in and just go, right, give me the ball, I'll put it away. But it's strikers. It's always been attackers for us. The defence is fine. Pochettino had a good defensive structure. Koeman's got a good defensive structure. It's just going forward. We need a consistent striker. And we have been linked with Oxlade-Chamberlain all since January, and I suspect we're going to be linked with them all through summer as well, because by the sounds of things, Arsenal fans and maybe even Arsenal themselves are ready to explore the idea of letting him go, even if just on loan. Then you just need someone quick, counter-attack, and if Jay Rodriguez is going to need more time to recover from his injuries, then Lacazette would be absolutely brilliant, but I don't see it happening. I think he's probably going to have... If he's available, there's no good reason why a Tottenham, an Arsenal, a Man City, someone wouldn't go, yeah, I'm having that. So I don't think him to Southampton is likely, but you never know.
Absolutely. And by the way, Jay Rodriguez, a fit Jay Rodriguez, I think would be a massive benefit to you next season, when he sort of had like that season to almost get over the injury.
Yeah, I mean, you think of him a couple of seasons ago with Lallana and Ricky. If he's played through the middle with Mane and Tadic, or maybe an Oxlade-Chamberlain, or whoever else we decide that we want to bring in, I think he's one of the best centre forwards that we've got, or one of the best centre forwards open to us. So yeah, I mean, if he's fit, then we don't need a Lacazette. But at the same time, you can't guarantee it with Jay. He's been pretty hard done by with injuries lately. Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Watch this space. A former England international, of course, as well. So not forget that. Whatever that means these days. Right. That's pretty much it for Premier League chatter this week. I should just give our listeners a table in case they don't have access to it. Leicester top, 73 points on 34 played. Spurs ahead of their game in hand tomorrow, where it's Stoke, 65 points. In second, Manchester City now up to third on goal difference ahead of Arsenal, both on 60 points. Manchester United sit 4 points outside the top four and fifth on 56, West Ham 53, Southampton 51, as are Liverpool. Stoke and Chelsea make up the top 10. Stoke with a win tomorrow will stay in ninth, by the way, but they will cut the gap to just a point to Liverpool and Southampton. And then down at the bottom, Villa, as we know, are doomed, relegated. It's official. They are gone. Championship fodder, 34 played and 16 points. Bad, I think it's fair to say. Newcastle, Sunderland still in the bottom three, 28 points for Newcastle, 30 for Sunderland. Norwich just about above the line on 31 points, but that gap has been closed. Palace, Swansea, West Brom, Bournemouth, Watford, Everton, all safe, we reckon, but you never know. So they're reading upwards. The goal scoring charts, Harry Kane and Jamie Vardy with his goal today. Vardy's both level on 22 goals. Sergio Aguero with his hat-trick yesterday, now 21. Lukaku 18, Mahrez 16 and Ighalo 14. And top of the assists, Mazza still way out in front on 18. David Silva on 11. Mahrez 11. Eriksen 10. Dele Alli 9. Kevin De Bruyne creeping back in on 9, along with James Milner also on 9. And the final one, we should check the old disciplinary column. I always like doing this when you're on. Good old Victor.
Top, don't we?
Good old Victor. 6 yellow cards, 3 reds, flanked just by Sadio Mane. 4 yellows, 2 reds. James Milner, 7 yellows, 1 red. Mark Noble, same with 10 disciplinary points. Tete and Colback are also in that top area. And good old Gareth Barry, good to see him making an appearance as usual. 6 yellows, 1 red. So that's 9 caution points. Francis Coquelin up there as well, actually, looking at this table.
Quick shout out to Danny for putting Wanyama in his team of the season last week. Oh, that was brilliant.
Oh, it was a joke. Seriously, Danny's team was an absolute abortion. It was. He did it in like 2 minutes, and he blatantly did it to troll me. So the best part is that some people were like, "Is this guy for real?" And I had to sort of say, "No, he was genuinely. He didn't take any time over it." So dreadful. I will get those on the website. Actually, I must remember to do that. Anywho, we've only got a couple of questions this week, so I'm going to let you just go for gold for a little bit on the Football League now, if I may. So I'm going to hand it over to you. If you want to just let our listeners know what's been going on, because we've had quite a lot of championship fixtures in the week and a half you've been off. So give us a quick heads up on a couple that you spotted at the weekend and where the table lies. And if you want to touch on anything in League One and League Two as well, feel free.
Well, quick mention to League Two then. There's not a great deal happening in League One and League Two this weekend. No guaranteed promotions or relegations in League One. But we did lose Dagenham and Redbridge from League Two after, I think, 9 years in the Football League, which is a pretty good run for Dagenham and Redbridge, I think. And Northampton went up as champions on the weekend, which is a fantastic achievement. I think their manager just won Manager of the Season or Manager of the Year in the Football League Awards earlier this evening. So fantastic campaign from Northampton. League One, I don't really have a lot to say about League One this week. Not really much that grabbed my attention, I'm afraid. But the Championship always has my attention because I think it's a fabulous league. I mean, the top four, I think, is just about done. I think that the race for Automatic is tasty, but I think the top four positions are about sealed now. Hull have been stuttering and starting for ages now, but they just managed to get around Wolverhampton Wanderers 2-1 with a last-minute free kick from Robert Snodgrass, who I didn't even realise was still at Hull. He just seems perennially injured, and you think he's been moved on somewhere, but no, he's still there. Brilliant free kick it was as well, in off the underside of the bar. Very, very big 3 points. That now keeps them in fourth. They're still 8 points, 8 points off of third, so I think they're probably going to have to stick with the playoffs now, but it's still great to see Hull cement their position there. The top three is getting mighty close. Brighton now have 81 points and are on a fantastic run. I believe they put 5 past Fulham. Yes, they put 5 past Fulham in midweek. Burnley down to second, but they are on 83, who beats Birmingham City 2-1, and then Middlesbrough are now top on 85. They got a late winner themselves in a 2-1 victory over Bolton Wanderers in the early kickoff, which wasn't the best game in the world, but the last few minutes did kind of make up for it. The promotion places in general, I think, are just about sealed now. You've got Sheffield Wednesday in 6th, 5 points clear of Cardiff. I think Sheffield Wednesday are the only ones that have got a realistic chance of stumbling their way out, but they need a lot to go against them as well, because Cardiff are not in the best of form at the moment either. So you've got Sheffield Wednesday in 6th, Derby in 4th, Derby in 5th, Hull in 4th, and then either Brighton, Burnley or Middlesbrough will be joining them. The bottom, of course, last week you had Bolton finally succumbed to relegation, which we all knew was coming. I think much like Aston Villa, I think that's going to be quite good for Bolton to go down a league and have a look at themselves and decide who's staying and who's going. And so long as the financial problems are kept in check, then I don't think League One is going to be too much of a problem for them next season. Charlton almost down, unfortunately. I do like Charlton, and one of their youngsters, Adamola Lookman, won an award this evening at the Football League Awards. But unfortunately, they look like they're almost down now. They are 11 points from safety with only 4 games to go off the top of my head. So Charlton look like they're down. And the bottom 3 looks like it's decided as well with MK Dons. They are now 9 points off of Rotherham, who have been on just the most incredible run. So it looks like the bottom 3 is now going to be Bolton, Charlton and Milton Keynes Dons, which kind of just ties up the bottom end and puts the focus back on the top end. It's strange that we did that Football League podcast and I mentioned that I thought Fulham would go down, and since then they went on 4 games undefeated and only lost against Brighton midweek, so that shows what I know. But there you go, Fulham safe, Rotherham safe, Nottingham Forest, Bristol Rovers, Blackburn Rovers and Bristol City all now appear to be safe as well. The big talking points from this weekend, the first one is the MK Dons game, where former Southampton goalkeeper Cody Cropper managed to get himself sent off for the MK Dons. they had to put their striker Alex Ravel in goal because they'd used all their substitutes, and then Alex Ravel saved the penultimate penalty, which kept it at 1-1. So that's a fantastic moment for the Championship. The other thing that's worth mentioning from this weekend isn't even in the games. It was Massimo Cellino. He has done an interview, I think it was for The Independent I was reading it on, but he has done the most incredible interview I've ever read from a chairman. It is just the most colourful and weird and abusive, but at the same time self-promoting interview I've ever read. It's if you're interested in Leeds, if you're interested in Massimo Cellino, then absolutely give that a read. It's a fascinating insight not only into all the controversy around him and explaining a lot of the reasons why the Leeds fans want him out, but also why he isn't going anywhere and why Leeds fans just kind of have to put up with it. So that's a highlight as well from the weekend. But aside from that, the Championship isn't looking sorted. The bottom end is, but the top end is certainly still looking a bit tasty.
Good old Cellino, gotta love him. I must admit, I've been beating the Sheffield Wednesday drum for a while because of our friend of the pod, Natalie. But I have to say, I've been really impressed with Brighton. Really impressed. I mean, I don't know what it is. They just seem to be free flowing and just so expansive. And that victory, I know it was Fulham, but I mean, they battered them, didn't they? And they found the form again.
It's like I say, Fulham had previously gone 4 unbeaten since we did that pod, and it all just turned around for them, and they looked a good outfit. And then suddenly Brighton come to town and absolutely smashed them. It was ridiculous, considering Brighton themselves don't often score more than maybe 1 or 2 goals in a game. To put 5 past Fulham was pretty incredible. So yeah, I mean, Brighton are a bit of a surprise package in the Championship, because I certainly expected them in and around the promotion hunt, but I didn't expect them to be automatic promotion contenders. So fantastic job that Chris Hughton has done, and he's also done a good job of recruiting. They've got guys like Steve Sidwell in there, which they just brought in for the experience to calm things down, but you've also got Anthony Knockaert, who I've been a big fan of for a long time. They brought him back in. I can't think of where he was now. I think it was Belgium or somewhere obscure European league like that they brought him back in from, and he has been fantastic since he came back in. It was just a little bit more energy that helped push them across the line. So big fan of what Brighton are doing, and it'd be great to see another team coming up from the South Coast, and that would mean Pompey, the only South Coast club to not be in the top flight.
So it would, yeah. Not that you'd love that in any way, shape, or form, of course.
No, I'd be impartial to that, of course.
But... Naturally, yeah. As bad as impartial as I am towards Spurs, of course. And just finally, before we leave the Championship alone, then has anything changed in your mind about who you think's going up? Has anything sort of slightly changed your opinion of who might go up or who might drop away?
I don't even remember who I said last time. That's just the nature of the Championship, is it all changes so quickly. Burnley have been far and away the best team the entire season. I know they're now second, but Burnley, as far as I'm concerned, have to go up. It would be a travesty if they didn't go up, in my opinion. So Burnley, I think, are guaranteed of it. Middlesbrough, I think, have probably got enough about them to keep it going. And then it is a straight fist fight between Brighton, Hull, Derby and Sheffield Wednesday, because as wobbly as Sheffield Wednesday have been, I don't think they're going to have such a bad run that they'll drop out at this stage. So, I mean, it's a free-for-all in the playoffs, as we all know. That's how QPR came up a couple of seasons ago, even though they absolutely did not deserve to. I would like to think the 3 teams that go up are Middlesbrough, Burnley and Brighton, because they have been far and away the best 3 sides in the league. But at the same time, you never know in the playoffs. But I think if I was going to put money on anyone, Burnley would be my definite. Middlesbrough, it would be my second, and probably Brighton as my third. But you never know in the playoffs.
I'd love to see Brighton. I don't know what I got this thing about liking new teams in the Premier League every year. I always like that fresh new team. I just think it'd be quite fun to have a new. And of course, Brighton is a bit like Bournemouth, where people love that away day. It'll be an awesome away day, I think, for a lot of fans. So and of course, a club that has been through the ringer. As far as finances go and whatnot. So
yeah, it's definitely been a long project. I remember being in League One with Brighton, and they won the league that year, and they were talking about going up to the Premier League and how much they wanted to cement themselves. So it's a long time coming for Brighton. They've had to go through a couple of relegation scraps and a few forgettable seasons, but this year could finally be the year.
Yeah, I agree. Here. Okay, well, we've got 2 questions to finish on, and if I think we've just about got enough time just to do a quick predictortron, which we won't do separate. We'll do it together. We'll try and work out together. But the 2 questions, one was kind of for the main pod actually, but I in the interest of getting it answered, I thought I'd just sandwich it onto here and just get your thoughts. And it was from Dan Rook at DJ Rook 10. I hope it's pronounced Rook. I think it is. He was saying about Unai Emery, who's the Sevilla coach. I might get Tom's opinion on this tomorrow as well, but he kind of asked whether he thinks that he's ready to take the step up to manage a bigger side. And the reason I've crammed it onto this pod is because I wanted to know whether you thought he could be the next successful Spanish manager in English football. We've seen sort of Kike Sanchez Flores do pretty well this year, Rafa Benitez in previous years, but no one's really sort of come into a big job, one of the big clubs, and been a success. Do you think? I suppose Pep Guardiola is going to be the one, isn't he? But do you think Unai Emery's got what it takes to make a real sort of transition into the Premier League and make the Spanish managers that sort of sought after quantity again?
I have to admit, because it's Spanish football, and Spanish football is my least favourite European league, I don't know much about Emery, but I can go by reputation and say as much as he's apparently, much like Remy Gard, was very well spoken of on the continent and in the people in the leagues that they were in. You don't get that kind of reputation for no good reason. There's a lot of people talking him up as a very good what's the word I'm looking for, manager for the future. I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but apparently he's going to be going on to bigger and better things than Sevilla at some point. But for me it's difficult because I haven't seen much of him, because like I say, Spanish football is just not my cup of tea. But there's nothing stopping him, in the same way that Remy Gard, I'm sure, will be back with another team at some point, which can settle down. And we've seen plenty of good managers of the same ilk as Emery come in and do a good job. So I don't see a reason why he couldn't, but it depends largely on what club he goes into. If he's unlucky like Remy Gard, then he's going to have his reputation tarnished in England. But if he comes into a Watford like Kike Sanchez Flores, then you never know.
Interesting, yeah, absolutely. So I'll get Tom's take on that. I appreciate it's a bit of a sideways step question-wise for an English pod, but I thought I'd get it in there nevertheless. Thank you, Dan, new listener, I think. So, the other question we had was from Brian at Donaldson_Brian, friend of the pod. He asked, "Do you think the EPL, Premier League, or FL Football League teams will start buying players from the MLS? And if you don't, where do you think the next sort of big nation or fashionable nation could be? We've seen a lot of like Belgium, Italy, Spain. Do you think there's maybe an emerging nation that teams might start pillaging from?"
I think Holland is the current one. It's the one that's developing, at least. Because I know with Koeman in the league and a couple of other managers that are going to be coming in from Holland, because there's always the rumours about De Boer coming in and that kind of thing. I think Holland is the next up and coming one, because it's a very, very technical league, and the Premier League suddenly decided that we like our technical players. I still think Germany is our closest league in terms of style, and it's famed. Even I know, as someone that doesn't watch much Italian football, that Italians don't leave their division. So I think Germany has to be the one that England looks at, but you never know, really. It's a hipster choice, really, isn't it? When it comes to leagues that suddenly become popular, I think Holland is probably the current flavour, or the one that's developing, at least. As for the MLS, the MLS has a very long way to go before Premier League teams start consistently poaching players off of the MLS teams. I think you can probably pick up a couple like Matt Miazga, like Chelsea have. There's always the occasional player that comes up in every division in the world that could do a job in Europe. But generally speaking, the MLS nicks players from the Premier League. The Premier League doesn't nick players from the MLS.
I would completely agree with you. Yeah, and MLS is, I enjoy MLS. It's good fun, but
it's rip-roaring, goal-scoring fun, isn't it? The MLS?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just not of the highest quality of players, and as you say, there are some betters, but better players coming out of the leagues. But yeah, I just don't think it's at a level where teams are really going to take it seriously at this stage. So
I think the MLS is great for players like Giles Barnes and Sean St. Ledger, and some of the players that come up to the Premier League but just don't quite cut it. I think the MLS is brilliant for that, but I don't think there's a give and take. I think the MLS is where you go from the Premier League. The Premier League doesn't go to the MLS and say, "What have you got?"
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. Shall we finish with a little predictortron then? And
attempt it, yes.
Yeah, just see if we can kind of work out where we think teams might finish and all that jazz. Now, I've got in front of me now a sort of a spreadsheet, which you can find yourself if you want to. It's worldfootball.net /table calculator, so you can find it for yourselves. Now, this is up to date with today's results as we speak. I think, do you know what I'm going to do to make it interesting? We're going to do this every week to the end of the season. So rather than doing it where we think it's going to end up, let's just do it week by week because that's far more fun. And then we can monitor it. So I'll screenshot it at the end of this week. So Stoke and Spurs, obviously it's tomorrow. You went for a Spurs win.
Yeah, narrow Spurs win 1-0.
Cool. I'm gonna let you pick that one. So we're gonna do this together. So we'll put that in as a result. So we'll go with Spurs to win that game. So we'll put that one in. Right, next week's fixtures then. We have got Manchester City against Stoke. It's a comfortable win for Man City. Are we thinking there?
I wouldn't say comfortable, but I'd go 2-0, 2-1, somewhere around that. I don't see Stoke winning that. So
let's go 2-1. Let's give them a goal. Bournemouth Chelsea.
Chelsea.
I think so. 3-1. I would have gone there. Would you say?
Yeah, somewhere around that. Yeah.
Cool, we'll go with that. Villa Southampton, 63-0 to Southampton.
It's just a case of how well we play. I think if we have another game like Everton, it could be a scrappy 1-0. But it's I think it's a Southampton win. It just depends how confident you are that our strikers will turn up.
Yeah, that's, I was going to say that's always the intriguing part, isn't it? We'll go. What should we say? 2-0 Saints.
Yeah, for argument's sake, let's say 2.
Cool. Liverpool Newcastle, biggie for Liverpool. This is at Anfield.
See, that was tricky. I can see lots of goals in that actually. After this week, I could see that being a 3-2, but I don't know which way I'd go. I mean, I'd probably say Liverpool because they do have just better quality players, and that backline at Newcastle is not the best to be facing Sturridge's pace and Origi and that kind of thing. But that's a tough one. I can see there being goals in that though. Yeah.
Okay. Should we go with a 3-2?
Can if you like.
Let's go with a 3-2. We'll say Liverpool because I think over the balance, I think you'd say they probably are the favourites to win that game. So, okay. So we'll go 3-2. Sunderland against Arsenal. Oh God, I could see this being a draw.
Yeah, I can see draw. I'd say 1-1 personally.
Yeah, I could see that. We'll go with that. Leicester Swansea. I fancy Leicester here.
Yeah, even without Vardy, I'd probably say a nice comfortable win with the clean sheet.
Yeah, 2-0.
Yeah, 1-0, 2-0.
Spurs West Brom. I can't see anything but a very comfortable Spurs win here. Even though West Brom is stubborn, I'd say 3-0. Really,
yeah,
for me.
that was my first thought. So.
There we go. That's that. West Ham Man United. Now, I sniff revenge here for the FA Cup game.
Well, I say it every week with West Ham. They turn up against the big teams, but not against the teams they should beat. So I'd be going West Ham. I'd be saying 2-1 there myself.
2-1. Yeah, we'll go 2-1. And finally, Norwich against Watford. I can see this relegation zone turning around again because I can see Norwich beating Watford. I know Watford are good away from home on the break, but I just think Alex Neil will have them up for this, and it will be like a "we've got to win this game, boys" type of scenario. I can see a 1-0, a tight, edgy 1-0.
Yeah, I can see that. At the same time, though, I still think that Norwich could just kind of fade. I think the whole bottom four could just fade and not so much stop, but just hit a brick wall. So I think it'll be close. And I can completely see Norwich winning that as well. But I'd be tempted to say a draw, maybe a 0-0 or a 1-1 myself. But I would also be happy to defer to you with the Norwich win because that also does strike me at the back of the head. There seems to be a bell ringing somewhere that says don't say Norwich aren't going to win because they will. But, so I'd be happy to go with you with a Norwich win.
I'll put it on my head. I'll say 1-0, but let's just have it to the listeners. So you said that could be a draw. So if I'm wrong, we're going to give you full credit there. Okay, so that completes week 35. If I press the old calculate button, I can tell you that, and I've screenshotted it as we speak, or screenshotted it, either way. That would mean that Leicester would only have, a 5-point gap ahead of Spurs. Man City would open up a 2-point gap on Arsenal in third, so Arsenal would still be in the top 4. But crucially, Arsenal would pull ahead of West Ham. Ahead of Man United, who would go level on points with West Ham. Arsenal will be on 61, West Ham, Man United on 56. Saints up to 7th on 54 with Liverpool. Then down the bottom, this is where it's key. Villa obviously gone 16 points. Newcastle would still be in the bottom on 28 points. But again, crucially, Sunderland would be 31 points. And even more crucially, Norwich, if they did get that win, would be 34 points. It'd open up a 3-point gap. And then obviously there's a gap to 39 points for Palace. So that's where we think it will be. As I say, I will screenshot these, and we'll go back each week and we'll review what we predicted.
Have a laugh about how bad we were.
Yeah, about how ridiculous our predictions were. So, yes, do tune in next week for our inevitable failures, but that's what we think is going to happen. Do tweet us your thoughts, and here's a little bit of a call to arms, if you will. If you are a fan of Championship football in particular, Ross's favourite league, do drop us a tweet, and Ross will go to work on a specific team or specific players, because we like to get Championship talk involved. And equally, if you are a fan of any other team that we aren't aware of, so I mean, if you're a Spurs fan, an Everton fan, a Norwich fan, do give us a shout, because we'd be very keen to focus on a couple of tweets from people who support those teams lower down. So
I would be fascinated to talk to a Doncaster fan.
Oh, that would be something else, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes, Doncaster are an incredibly interesting one. So if there's a Doncaster fan out there, I'm all ears.
Crack on, absolutely. Okay, well, since it's just the two of us, mate, I think we've done pretty well tonight to get through all that and cover a lot of ground. So, as I say, keep the tweets coming in at the FH Podcast. We have a YouTube channel where this podcast will live, as well as iTunes. You can drop us a tweet, and indeed, if you get a chance, a little comment on YouTube, a thumbs up, or an iTunes review, especially, is really appreciated. So, leave us a review. Good or bad, we'll take them all, but obviously good is even better. So that was the Football Hipsters English Breakfast. The season is not much longer to go, not much more to run, but we will be across all the twists and turns, and we'll be back next week so you can laugh at our predictions. So until then, Ross, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, as ever.
And thank you very much to our loyal listeners, and we will speak to you next week. Keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy, and thanks again for listening.
Vivian Foet, Sinclair's cross over Cunningham. Di Canio! Oh, I do not believe that. That is sensational. Tissier. He's going for goal again. Oh! Only Matthew Le Tissier can score goals like that. Collymore closing in.